Welcome, everybody listening in. Thanks so much to all of our regular viewers. To all of our new viewers, my name is Ari Zuckerman, Vice President at Centercourt Sports Academy. Our goal for our Centercourt webinar series is to keep valuable information flowing to the international and to the local tennis and sports community, and to keep all of you engaged with creative ideas throughout these tough times. Part of this goal includes our brand new and exciting Centercourt 360 program. The 360 program is a holistic approach to developing the whole student. These programs provide skill sets to learn, hone, challenge, enrich, and fortify the students' resiliency, accountability, and self-driven performance. We also have a host of weekly speakers, which I'll throw into the chat later on. Today's main topic is going to be striving for American tennis excellence. Our very special guest today is Michael Russel. Michael was a former professional player who reached a career high ranking of world number 60. He's currently running the Michael Russel Tennis out of Houston, Texas, and recently coached some of the top American players in the world: Tiafoe, Harrison, Query, Taylor Fritz, through the USTA Player Development Program. Joining me as well, my regular guest, coaching legend, Mr. Conrad Singh. Conrad is the COO, Director of Coaching, and Head of Performance at the Centercourt Sports Academy. Thanks again, everybody. Conrad, over to you, and let's get this going.
Thanks a lot, Ari. I want to start with what an absolute pleasure, Michael, to have you here. And thanks to shout out to a good friend of ours, Michael Luevino, for getting us connected. First and foremost, welcome. And I always ask, let us know a little bit about what you're up to right now.
Yeah, no, thank you, Conrad. Ari, it's great to be here. Obviously, it's difficult times for everyone with COVID-19. We're all mostly staying at home. They're starting to lift some of the shelter-in-place orders throughout the country. Here in Houston, they're actually opening tennis clubs starting tomorrow, May 1st, which is nice, at least, to get some of the people out as long as they follow certain restrictions and guidelines. So before the pandemic happened, I was coaching Tennis Sangren and Mackenzie McDonald on the ATP Tour, as well as coaching here in Houston. So we're all keeping our fingers crossed. Everyone stays safe and healthy, and hopefully professional tennis, can get back to happening sometime this summer.
Well, Michael, we were talking a little bit in the green room before we came on, but you're an absolute legend of tennis. I mean, you've done everything from college tennis. I believe it was, you started on the Pro Tour in '98. I lost count of how many number one players that had held a number one ranking that you played against. Your era was phenomenal. Sampras, Agassi. I mean, I don't even need to go through it. Roddick, Jennifer, Bryan brothers. I mean, the list just goes on. What are your thoughts on the general state of tennis globally? That's something we're talking to a lot of international tennis people as well. The state of tennis globally, and then probably the state of tennis here in the US at the moment.
Well, I mean, globally, I think tennis is extremely strong. You see so many great tournaments and players in Europe, Asia, Australia, even South America. And talking a little bit of the generation that I came through, and also now, I mean, I'm a little bit biased towards tennis, but it's the best athletes in the world. I mean, you have to be so strong physically and mentally, and then deal with so much adversity and different variables that other sports don't have to deal with. Tennis has more variables than any other sport. So when you're looking at internationally, I mean, the players, there's no real weaknesses on any players. Everybody moves well, they serve well. The average height, I think, on the ATP is now, on the men's side, is close to almost 6'3", but everybody moves well. So it's not like they're tall and they can't move. In the US, we're trying to get the guys to work a little more on the clay courts, to really develop their games. It helps with the movement, it helps with the balance a little more, especially at the grassroots level. USA is really trying hard to get the development side of the kids playing more on clay. But, I think we got a good group of young Americans coming up with Opelka, Fritz, Tiafoe. I got to name the guys that I coach, McDonald, I'll throw Sangren in there. Isner's been number one in the U.S. for a long time, leading the way for the young Americans coming up. But, hopefully, that next generation young guys can, make a breakthrough and slide into the top 10 or have a deep run in a slam soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's the depth of American tennis is incredible. There's just constantly so many players around the fringes and just waiting for that opportunity, or sometimes it's luck too that helps them just get a win they maybe shouldn't have gotten, and it gives them a boost. So we've got to start straight out. I mean, obviously you're working with Tennis Sangren. What an unbelievable Australian Open. I mean, it's the only Grand Slam we had for the year. What a highlight. And, you made a quarterfinal there. And tell us a little bit about that. You're obviously in the coaching box. Tell us a little bit about all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a phenomenal tournament. He got through his first round pretty handily in straight sets. And then second round, he was up 2 sets. He's playing Berrettini, a top 10 player, very explosive, huge serve, can pop the forehand from anywhere in the court. Tennis goes up 2 sets to love, loses the next 2 sets. So obviously, from a mental side of the game, it's easy to lose focus, get a little bit down on yourself. And he was serving it 4-all, love 40 in the 5th, and did a great job of holding serve. That was a pivotal game. And then end up breaking serve at 5-all and then holding it love. And that was a huge match for him to get through. Not only just because, yes, you get to the 3rd round of the Australian Open, but just mentally being up 2 sets of love, losing those 2 sets, and then winning in 5. Beats compatriot Sam Querrey, good friend, in the 3rd round, who he lost to at Wimbledon last year, so he got a little bit of revenge there. Had a crazy match with Fognini in the round of 16. A lot of drama, bathroom breaks. They had the supervisor that had to come on the court, which is kind of routine when Fabio's playing.
Yeah,
he did this
another day, yeah.
there's always, it's fun. It's super entertaining because, you never know what you're going to get. And then he battled really hard to get through that. And then, as most of you guys know, because we're all tennis fans, up 2 sets to 1 on Roger, had 7 match points, a majority of those at 5-6 and in the tiebreak, and unfortunately wasn't able to convert and then end up losing in 5 sets. So obviously a heartbreaker of a loss, but at the same time, phenomenal tournament. So he's got to make, we had a long talk afterwards. Ari, we talked before about, some of the things after that type of match, what you tell your player after being so close to beating obviously one of the greatest players in the world, who a lot of players look up to. It's important to really look at the positives and keep everything in perspective, because you can get pretty negative being so close to having such a momentous win. You got to keep the player positive and looking in the present, looking at the future of all the positives he can take and keep building on it.
Wow, that must have just been an absolutely incredible experience for both himself and yourself. And I wanted to go through this point as well. Through your career, which was just phenomenal. I think when you started back in '98, I believe you played Gustavo Kuerten and you played Leighton Hewitt at some other stage in your life where you were up a couple of sets and they may have got a little lucky and come back and had a win. Did that play any sort of those experiences? Did that help you in any way with your conversations with tennis or how did you learn from those moments?
Yeah, no, definitely. You share in the experiences of being so close to beating a number 1 player in the world. Similar situation. Mine was 4th round French Open. His was quarterfinals against Roger. Mine was 4th round against Gustavo Kuerten. I was fortunate to even be in that position because I came through qualifying that year. I was actually down match point first round of qualifying. And then 7 matches later, I'm playing Kuerten up match point. But, having that experience, we talked about, the negatives. I brought that up first because you can't sugarcoat it. You have to look at what you could have done better. And then really focus on the positives and showing him how good he is. and that all the top 10 players that he's beaten in the last 2 years. And the fact that, you know, a lot of players are afraid of him, the way he plays, his physicality, how fit he is, and that why not take this tournament as an opportunity, as kind of a showcase to say, okay, that 2018 quarterfinal run in Australia wasn't a fluke. I am a legitimate, you know, top 20, top 15 player if I can continue to build on it, you know, and use that mental fortitude and continue to build on not only my physical fitness, but also keep working on my game. Because, you know, as we know, everybody's constantly improving their game. I mean, Roger, Rafa, Novak, you know, you look at their games when they first started on tour, and every 5 years, I like to say, you have to continue to reassess and keep improving and keep adding different strengths, because you get these next generation players, which they might have a shot or they might have a game style that it's better than yours at the time. So you have to keep adapting and keep evolving.
So I wanted to touch on one of the points you raised then, which is physicality. You were renowned as one of the hardest working, fastest, super fit athletes in your playing days. And you obviously were at that level for 17, 18 years. That's phenomenal. Very few players are able to do that. How much was fitness a part of your game? Bearing in mind your size and all those sorts of aspects.
Yeah, I mean, I knew, given my stature, that in order for me to have the best chance and to maximize my game, whether it's in juniors, college, or the pros, I was going to have to be really fast and really fit. And it kind of goes back to what we talked about, where there's so many variables in tennis that there's few things that you can control. And one of those things is your fitness. So I didn't ever want to come off the court and be disappointed with the way that I was physically. You know, I didn't want to have any regrets and say, you know what, I lost because I was tired. I lost because I wasn't fit enough. And so that really kept me self-motivated the whole time. I will say I am a little bit of a fitness freak. So I'm still doing a ton of fitness even today when I'm not playing. So I enjoy the physicality. I enjoy working out every day. It helps me relieve stress. I feel more productive when I do it. So it's part of my daily routine and my lifestyle now, but it's so important. Tennis is it's such an athletic sport. So I feel nowadays, if you're not fit, you almost don't even have a chance to succeed at this sport, you know, at any level. You want to be at the highest levels in junior tennis, college and pros, you have to be fit.
Yeah, so you raised another point just there that I wanted to touch on, and that is your pathway was very classic in that you went through all the age groups, top junior in the country, I think at 16s, kept going through the 18s, went through college, you're playing on tour, you're still studying some parts of your academic pathway whilst you were competing. A phenomenal story. Tell us a little bit about that and sort of the balance between education and tennis and kind of what you went through.
Yeah, so I had the decision after juniors. I played really well in juniors. I was ranked number 1 in the country. But at the same time, I didn't feel like I was mature enough physically or mentally to be successful on the pro tour. So I went and I played 1 year of college tennis at the University of Miami. And I felt like I would reassess after each year. I played really well at Miami. I was freshman of the year, Rolex, national freshman of the year. Didn't do well at NCAAs, but I won national indoors. And then after my year in college, I played as an amateur that summer and got to about 250 at the time in about 3 months. So wow. I figured that was pretty good. It's a good indication of let's try to play on tour for at least 2 or 3 years and see how I do. And I can always go back and get my degree, especially at that time. There were a lot of online programs starting to open up, which was great. I mean, now there's so many online options to get your degree. So I made the decision back in 2010 to finish my degree online while I was still playing. So, it was great for me, but it was difficult. The time management aspect. So there were a few times where I'd have to take a test while I'm still competing in a tournament. So it's kind of funny.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it was tough. So one of the exams happened to fall on a day when I actually was in the Australian Open, and I was playing a night match against Juan Martín del Potro on what used to be Hisense Arena, and now it's I think it's Margaret Court. So I played Del Potro. We play for like 4 hours. I lose in 4 sets, and I finish it, I think, 11:45 at night, and I have to take a 2.5-hour math exam that night afterwards. So I finished my cool down, and then I think I finished the exam at like 3:30 in the morning.
Long day.
Long day, yeah.
I mean, the takeaway from that, I mean, today, you look at today's tennis, we've been talking about it a lot, but the average age for the top players at ATP is 27. So it seems to me that the logical move today is to go to college. If you've got the way and the means to get in to a good school and follow your tennis with college, you should be doing it together. What are your thoughts on that, as opposed to maybe many years ago when players probably didn't think like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate of going through the college pathway first, and then if you're successful through the college pathway, then you can go and test the waters on the pro tour. I think a lot of it has to do with just being physically and mentally mature enough to weather the vigors of the pro tour. I think maybe 15, 20 years ago, it seemed like the age was a little bit younger where guys were turning pro. Maybe they were getting the sport wasn't as physical. Not to take away from the talent level, but I just felt like the training, like it's such a business now where, every pro has teams around them. They have their own physio. Some guys travel with their own chefs, doctors, coaches, obviously wives, girlfriends. So it's much more of a business, where before you basically just had the player and maybe a coach. A top 10 player might have a physio as well. So I think now, because it's so much more physical and the players it's taking longer to get that maturity level, college is the best platform to start from, unless you just happen to be young and already physically mature and already showing signs of success at the pro level.
Conrad, I got a good question about it, sort of a follow-up. What's your take on the current, when tennis gets back, what's your take on the current schedule, which is basically, year-round for the most part, with a month off here and there? And what do your players think of that? I mean, there's just tournaments all the time now, with the Australian Open, and then you got, the London tournament at the end of the year, and so on and so forth. It's
challenging. When I first started with Sangren last summer, he was coming off 4th round of Wimbledon, and then went right to play 3 ATP events. And, he was still tired and also physically a little banged up from Wimbledon. And, we talked about scheduling, and in hindsight, I told him, I thought it probably wasn't the best schedule to go and play those 250 events right after. And I think that's a huge key, not only or as you say, in pro level, but even in junior tennis as well, is making sure that when you're playing the tournaments, that you're peaking for those tournaments and not just scheduling so many events one after the other, because not only do you get burned out mentally, but physically your body can't withstand that. And then you're not really you're setting yourself up for failure, because you're not giving yourself the best chance to do well. And it ties back into everybody being, so physically fit, that even that 1% difference in a little bit of fatigue mentally or physically, and you're giving your opponent that advantage, which makes it that much tougher.
I wanted to ask you, Michael, you raised a great point there about the top guys are really, they've got a whole team around them, an entourage, actually. You look at, I'm Australian, I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and I'm obviously a huge fan of the talent in Nick Kyrgios. But I have to wonder, if the top guys have got 5, 6 people around them, he's often on his own, sometimes with his family, travels occasionally with a mate or two. What do you think? If he could get that either I've seen either of two ways. Either he gets a team around himself, or he goes, not that it's possible now, but had a talent like that gone through a college situation with a team around him there, that could have helped him mature. And he's spending week after week on the road on his own. And I know you did that as well. Tell us a little bit about that. And, what's your opinion of what he could do and based on your experiences?
Yeah, well, I mean, we all know, because we talk about all the time how talented Nick is. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the shots that he's able to come up with, there's really no weakness. And if we did talk about a weakness, it would be, his focus and, his desire sometimes at the tournaments. He kind of loses the drive when you think it should be there. And, for me, it's different because I always had the motivation every time I stepped on court, but I didn't have nearly the talent that he has. So I would love to have that talent. I'm sure he would love to have sort of like my type of motivation. But at the same time, I think it also helps take the pressure off of him a little bit. So he travels with a good friend of his, who's also his physical trainer, Ash, that helps him. And I think it keeps him comfortable. It seems like I don't think Nick likes to being out of that comfort zone. So, and you see it sometimes playing in tournaments where if there's a little bit extra pressure, a little bit more on the line, sometimes it leads him down the road of negativity or getting a little more anger involved. So it's tough. If he's not going to respect the coach who's going to try to help him, or he doesn't want to have the help, then, it's hard to just throw somebody with him and say, okay, this person's going to be with you. He's a phenomenal coach who can help you. But if Nick doesn't want that help, then, it's going to be counterproductive. But, from a talent standpoint, it's incredible. And, he played really well in Australia. I thought mentally he did a great job. So I'm hoping maybe after this whole pandemic, we get through this, maybe this will also help him get through the focus and the mental maturity a little bit. And hopefully we can see another side of Nick.
Yeah, I think, part of the role being on the tour, and better than anyone, you spend a lot of weeks on your own. And, you got to get up emotionally for that match. And sometimes you're playing twilight matches, right? So you're playing 6:30 or 5 o'clock. It's not always not regular day. And to sort of get yourself going all day and then have to get up for the match on your own or with a fitness trainer, not with a coach that can tell you when to do this, when not to do that, and kind of keep you online. It really does, I think, make a difference. And there are many guys out there today, and obviously the young Americans, with yourself being one of a group of great coaches with them. How much of it now is teaching? How much of it is managing? How much of it is just guiding? What sort of percentages of time would you spend more on the fitness versus the on-court side development, etc.?
Yeah, well, it's really, we follow the periodization model, which I know it sounds very generic, but it is, you have to taper depending on what you're getting ready for. So, if we take, for example, just to run through the year real quick, like in December, you have a good 4 to 6 week training block getting ready for the whole year. So that's where we'll really ramp up the fitness. At times, 2-a-day tennis, 1-day fitness, and then the next day will be 2 sessions of fitness, 1 session of tennis, where we're creating that base for the whole year. And then once the tournament season starts, we're going to focus a little more on the tennis aspect, and the fitness part is more on explosiveness, maybe less endurance, a little bit more on working on the short segments and being specific to points. You only have 25 seconds or 20 seconds in between points, depending on if it's ITF or ATP rules. And then nutrition's a big part of it. Sangren really focuses a lot on his nutrition. Mackie now as well. And that's a big part of it, because it not only does it give you the psychological edge, that you're cutting out certain things in your diet, but you also feel better. You're fueling your body in the right way to give you the energy when, at 4-all in the 5th set, you're not crashing. You still have the energy and the reserves to get through those tough moments physically.
You talked about the fact that it's a big business now. with the young Americans coming on versus when you first started and you were the young guy coming on, how has the tour changed? And you know, has it helped the young American players a little more in the changes, in that it's more professional, or you know, was it a little tougher when you were coming through? What's your take on that?
I think, yeah, I mean, more toward the business side. So everybody's still friendly. I mean, the guys get along really well, but they do tend to stick with their own teams more. Where when I first started in '98, I felt like there's probably a little more camaraderie amongst the group of guys. That being said, you still see the countries, like the players from their same countries do hang out quite a bit together, which is nice. So a lot of the young American guys will hang out together. Spanish guys will hang out with Spanish guys, you know, and vice versa, Serbian guys with Serbian guys. So in general, everybody gets along really well. And then the players that they're more comfortable with have the more familiarity. They spend more time together. And it's also nice because they kind of lean on each other for support, a little bit of advice, you know, from certain players. Obviously, they look to the coaches and other players to help. But when a guy like Isner, it can come and he can, you know, talk to, let's say, Tommy Paul or Riley Opelka and give him a little bit of advice, you know, it's going to help a lot.
So how does that work in terms of competition? If these guys are, you know, most close friends for the most part, or even when you were playing, and then you compete against them, and obviously, you know, there's, you know, with Williams sisters and situations like that. But how, you know, is there still the same drive you have against somebody who you don't like that much, and somebody who you're good buddies with, and you maybe roommate, you know, you've been hanging out with the night before?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel it's actually always easier to play someone that you don't like as much, because exactly. It kind of gives you that little extra impetus, motivation that you don't want to lose to them. Where you play someone who's your friend, you know, it's easy to kind of have that letdown, and sometimes you don't want to show too much emotion, you know, because it's your friend, so you don't want to, and especially in juniors, you know, you're worried about, you know, what's the perception, you know, is he going to be worried that I'm, you know, fist pumping in his face? Is he not going to want to be friends with me? Where in the pro level, we know it's not personal. So you go on the court, I'm playing a tennis ball. The dimensions of the court are the same. The net is the same height. And, you know, I'm going out there and I'm trying to beat that person. You know, it's not personal, but I want to win the match. And afterwards, you know, we're still friends. I'm not going to say we're in the locker room afterwards and we're all hanging out and, you know, hugging each other and everything, you know, because we're all competitors. We want to win. But at the end of the day, you know, a couple days later, you know, we can sit down and have a conversation and like rational human beings. But it's difficult. Yeah. Playing your friends, you have to make sure that you take that friendship aside and realize that, hey, you know, we're competing and it's not personal, and really make sure that you stay focused.
So, Michael, you had an amazing record that I think was overtaken in 2013 or 14 of 23 USTA singles title wins. That's a lot of domestic playing. Were you know,
who took it over? I want to know who took it over.
I'll look it up, but it was, I think in 2013 or 2014, someone nabbed you. Did they, or is that wrong?
I'll find out.
Yeah, but the point is, that's a lot of domestic tennis. And are the guys doing that, or are they spending most of their time away from the big tournaments on the road as well?
Most of the guys, they try to play in the U.S. They're familiar with the conditions. It's close to home, and I'm a big advocate of also playing in the U.S. because I feel like if you can win in your home country, which whether it's tougher conditions or not, you can win anywhere. And sometimes when you travel to some of the other countries, the conditions are going to be tougher. So you're not, even though, let's say the player database, the ranking list might be weaker, just from a ranking standpoint, it's going to be more difficult to deal with the conditions, whether that's accommodations or getting the right foods that you're used to, just everyday normal things. So I always try to steer the players playing in the U.S. first and see how successful they can be before venturing out and playing internationally. Now, that being said, the ATP schedule, you have to play internationally. Now you have to go to Australia, then you have to go to Europe for the clay court swing. And then in the fall, we go over to Asia and play over there, and then finish up indoors in Europe.
I wanted to ask you, obviously bringing it back to a little bit the corona and the COVID this time right now. Obviously, there's a lot you can't do, but there's a lot that you can do. And I think a lot that you've preached today, the mental, the physical, the goal setting, things like that, can all be done at this time. How are your guys dealing with it? Are they feeling like it's a reset time, a refresh time? It's also a great time for the body, right? I'm sure the guys get little niggles along the way, and you experienced some difficulties as well. I believe you had three knees. You had some sort of upper arm, shoulder issue at some point. So you had some time out as well. Is it a little bit similar? Can you rely on that time out now when you're talking to your players?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had 3 knee surgeries, and then I tore my labrum and 2 rotator cuff tears in the shoulder. So definitely spent quite a few months on the sidelines. And the biggest thing is one, keeping the players goal focused, goal oriented, and process minded, because there's a lot of uncertainty, and that's for everyone, juniors, college, pros. We don't have a set date when the tournaments will resume. So, and, for some of the guys, and even one of the guys that I coach, he was kind of having a knee injury a little bit. So it's a good time to rest up his knee, get stronger. Both players have access to a private court. So they're both staying safe and healthy, but they do have access to training. And we're trying to taper it where it's basically 3 times a week. So they're not overdoing it. You want to stay fresh, but training tennis-wise about 3 times a week, but then getting in the gym about 5 times a week, and just continuing to reassess. And also a big part of this time is working on the mental side, like you said, Conrad, where, take the time, read some great books. I'm a big advocate of reading books, and also, reaching out to the people like we're doing right now with, Zoom has been blowing up with these conferences, which is great, where you can, in the past when we're traveling and playing on tour, life seems to go by 24/7, just like you guys at, Centercourt Sports Academy. You guys have amazing juniors and you're doing great. And, just every day, sometimes it goes so fast.
Right.
Everybody's training and the routines, where now it's a good opportunity to reach out to other people, get advice, have these good conversations that can help, not only ourselves, but players and other people as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is all about perspective. One of the, I'm not going to say issues, but one of the topics that's been coming up as I speak to different parents and of players is the fear of loss of momentum. Now, these are juniors, right? So it's a very different story to say tennis, who's just made a quarter at a Grand Slam. What do you think about that? My feedback is, look, momentum's always able to be built. Yeah, okay, we've all got to go through it, but everybody's going through it. It's not like one guy's off the sidelines and everyone else can continue. What's your take on that? It's exactly
the same philosophy and the same conversations that I have with the guys that I work with, is that we're all in the same boat. So we're all starting at the same starting line. If we're doing a sprint, there's nobody ahead of the other person. So when we get that date, when that first tournament's going to start, which we don't know yet, then we can all plan and we can make a training block that leads up to that. And we can prepare ourselves the best possible way to be ready on that start date. But as of right now, the momentum is the same for everyone. So, you can go and, you can continue to train super hard, but you got to be smart with it. Take this time to really improve, especially to the junior players, really improve upon your game. This is a great opportunity, especially once you can get on the court. Let me rephrase that, make sure in a safe environment, once you can get back on court training, use the time to really work on the aspects of your game to get better. Whether that's a certain shot, whether that's dealing with pressure, the mental side, the physical side. So, because a lot of times we don't have these long training blocks at our disposal.
True.
Very true. Ari, did you want to pick up a couple of questions? I know a fair few coming in.
Yeah, we have some great questions. Well, first I did my research. I found that Michael has 24 single titles as part of the pro tennis circuit, so that's still the most. And Bobby Reynolds has 31, which I guess includes doubles. So Bobby Reynolds has the most singles and doubles. Bobby Reynolds.
Yeah, Bobby. He's a good friend of mine.
Oh, you and Bobby, but you're still the champ with 24, so you're there.
Yes.
Yeah, let me go. So congrats. I got a Bo from Denver wants to know, great question. We've gotten this on a couple of calls. What do you recommend in regards to on-court as opposed to off-court training? I know now it's basically primarily off-court training, but in a typical, let's say, 3-hour junior session or, something like that, on-court or off-court.
Yeah, no, great question. I know Bo, actually. So, Bo, how you doing?
Okay.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, so there's on-court fitness is still the most important because that can be the most, that's the closest to actual playing the sport. So we do a lot, if it's a 3-hour tennis session, a lot of the fitness drills that we do involve proper court footwork, proper technique, making sure your crossover, recovering, all your change of movements, agility drills. That I would prioritize first on court, and then the off-court training can be a complement to the on-court training. So if you have to choose between the two, I would always recommend doing on-court fitness before doing the off-court. The off-court fitness, I would focus a little bit more on strength because that will help you withstand some of the breaking down of your body, because that's basically what we do when we play tennis. You're breaking down your body, and then by lifting weights, you still break down your body when you lift weights, but you're putting muscle on, and that will help you withstand a lot of the physicality of tennis. So it's important that you get a good program. I like to focus on a little bit more explosive stuff in the gym, not as heavy, and focusing a little bit more on eccentric work. And I don't do a lot of forward movements like chest involvement because we're already swinging the racket forward. So most of the exercises in the gym are usually back, shoulders, legs, hips, a lot of balance exercises, and a lot of proprioception. And then on court would be a lot of typical drills that we do, and then your everyday spider drills, suicides, a lot of monster walk bands. I'm sure you guys do a lot of that at your academy, and just continuing to build up the legs, and the cardiovascular system.
That's absolutely awesome. I wanted to ask you, if I might, what 3 sort of main characteristics do you look for in players? So, I'm sure you get a lot of offers come your way on who you're going to work with, and I'm sure you really think about that and do your research. What are the 3 sort of main characteristics you would look at before you'd be happy to take someone on?
Well, I think it depends because I work both on the private side and on the professional side. So on the private side, I'm looking at anyone that's respectful, wants to work hard, and is willing to learn and improve. I'm willing to take them on because that's fun for me to work with, and it's a process to keep working on their game and to get better. But as long as they're respectful and working hard and they have the commitment and they believe not only in themselves but in my coaching, then I'm happy to take them on. On the professional side, I have to be a little bit more peculiar because you can get a player that works crazy hard, but honestly, if the talent isn't there, they're going to hit a ceiling, which is going to be difficult to break through to a certain point. So you have to look at the talent, then you have to look at the commitment and the drive. And then after that, you look at, are they, which kind of goes in with the commitment and the drive, is but the competitiveness and the work ethic. And those 3 factors combined really allow me to say, okay, yeah, I can take this person on. I think I can get them to this level. And then again, they have to buy into it. And I have to, I'll just lead into another thing. One of the things that I've learned the most from coaching is understanding. you have to be a great listener, and there's not one size fits all for every player. So you really have to understand the player and, have that exchange and communication that's kind of like we're having here, that open dialogue that can be bounced back and forth.
And I got to ask, when you were a player, what were you looking for in a coach? So was it the similar sort of characteristics, or?
I mean, I'm pretty stubborn. I'm still stubborn. So even when I was playing, I was stubborn. And yeah, I mean, I was looking for someone that could communicate well, and then also help me to understand why I'm doing something. So if they're offering suggestions, whether it's a drill or working on something that I need to improve upon, why am I doing it? What's my goal? And then if I was able to buy into it, then that was great. And being with a coach and traveling together, it's a lot of times people say it's kind of like a second marriage, because you spend a lot of time, with the player. So you have to get along on and off the court and make sure that there's a lot of synergy between the two of you.
Yeah, that's completely right. You also, I wanted to talk a little bit about doubles too. You had a little bit of double success. You played alongside the Bryan brothers and some of these legends that came through. Obviously, doubles is essential in college tennis, and we've had some great coaches on from Harvard, from Princeton, from different places talk about the fact that they're looking for young players that are adaptable. They're able to play singles, they can come in doubles. What was your sort of emphasis in your career playing? Were you always looking to play doubles as well most weeks, or were you focusing just on singles?
I was looking to play doubles, but I wish I would have practiced my doubles more. So I did have some good results, especially later on in my career, where I actually would spend like 4 or 5 days practicing with my partner at the tournament. And then I improved a lot because my instincts were much better, like knowing when to poach, knowing where to gauge my positioning on court based on where my opponent hit the ball. Where coming up through juniors and even early on in my pro career, I would play doubles, but it was more just to basically get into the tournament and have another way to create financial means beside the singles. But playing doubles is extremely important, not only because it makes you a better player. I mean, you're working on your serving, your returning, your transition game, your volleys, but also, like you said, in college tennis, it's a pivotal point. To win that doubles point first on in college is big, and it makes you a better player. We see the guy, I mean, Rafa's coming to net more. Novak's improved his volleys. Roger obviously has always volleyed really well. Guys are starting to come to net more because it's hard to finish points. Everybody moves well, and it seems like nobody ever misses, and everybody's fit. So it's important to have that transition game developed.
I also wanted to ask you, Michael, when you're preparing the players today versus when you were playing, there's so much statistical information around. And our first speaker was Craig from Australia, Craig O'Shaughnessy, I'm sure you know really well. I mean, it's just so advanced. How much do you guys rely on that sort of information? And do you get reports of the players you're coming up against? How important is that now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of AI now use in tennis, which is great. It's just knowing how to use it, when to use it, and knowing your player, because certain players like to have a lot of data, and then certain players don't want to have it because, sometimes you can have data that says, okay, the opponent likes to serve to your backhand on the ad side, down break point, let's say 75% of the time. So if I relay that information to my player and he's expecting the backhand, that he's going to get a backhand on that break point, and he gets aced down the tee, he's looking at you right away. So, which it happens anyways, but it's just, some players are okay with that, knowing that, okay, that 75% of the time they might do that, but there could be a 25% they go the other way. Other players, they don't want to know that. They would rather just have a little more basic analytics, basic scouting reports as far as, okay, they like to look for the forehand, the running forehand, it breaks down more under pressure. So try to pepper that side on big points. So it really just depends who your coach is and which player wants to have that much data.
Yeah, I guess is there an overall move towards more analytics in tennis, or I guess it's like you said, it's just the individual. It's more of the individual who decides what they kind of want, right?
Yeah, I do think there is more of a move though, because we have all these Hawkeye reports and this data that we have the ability to get.
Right.
So, you know, the more data, I guess, the better we can get information on opponents and certain tendencies, which is great. You know, I like it, but it just, you know, depends. If it's going to affect my player's psyche at certain positions in the match, then, you know, you have to be aware of that.
And so do the players today, when they come off, you mentioned before, everyone's different, right? There's no two ways with it. The guys you've got now, are you able to talk to them straight away? Because this relates back to parents as well. A lot of the time, again, we're obviously trying to help parents to do the best they can with their kids. And Centercourt, we've got incredible parents, very supportive. But it's probably not the best time after a loss to go straight in and start saying, hey, you know what? The forehand's not working or whatever it might be. So what's your take on that? I mean, obviously growing up, I think your dad played tennis as well at Michigan. I think you had a brother that played at Princeton. So you're clearly a tennis family and clearly can play. What's your take on that as a parent? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, and I know, well, like you said, growing up in a tennis family, I always like to give my players space. I'll come into the locker room afterwards. I always give them a handshake right away, even if they lost, and I say, great effort, depending if it was a great effort. If it wasn't, if they self-destructed, I just say, bad luck. And then usually I'll just sit down next to them. I'll give them the opportunity if they want to speak up first, if they want to say something. And sometimes the player will say something right away, just it's on their mind, they want to get it off their chest, and they're initiating the dialogue. Then I'll go ahead and we'll just start the dialogue right away, and then we can talk about the negatives and the positives. If they don't initiate anything, then I let time go by. Sometimes I'll let a whole day go by. You know, if it's a really tough loss and they're really hard on themselves, they don't need another voice that's going to come down on them to be hard enough, because it's individual sport. And, you know, a lot of the kids, they can be really hard on themselves. And so I give them that space and that time to think and ponder things through. And then I also give them the choice. I said, look, if you want to talk about the match, let me know if you want to talk about it today or this evening. If not, let's go over it tomorrow. And I'll see what they say. And I put the ball in their court and let them decide. But I won't let them just also not talk about it. You know, I mean, we are going to have to talk about it because we want to learn from it.
That's a great point. I wanted to, if I could, ask you one technological question. Coming on the tour in '98, and obviously playing a lot of tennis before that, going through juniors, college, etc., up until now, where you're working with guys at the highest level. What are the biggest couple of technological changes with rackets, whether it be equipments, courts, balls? And is it favoring any type of player, or what is it that you feel?
I definitely feel there's been more of a trend to slow down the conditions, as far as the courts being a little slower, more, especially the hard courts, more sand in the courts when they resurface them, and the balls being heavier as well. You know, I feel like whether there's more felt in the ball or the way they pressurize the ball, it just seems like it's harder to hit winners sometimes. And we saw that even in Australia this year. I don't know if you guys saw the Kyrgios-Kachanov match, the one they played late at night. It was cool conditions, and it seemed like neither guy could hit a winner. And you're talking about two of the biggest hitters on tour, and probably the biggest hitters ever in the game of tennis. You know, I mean, both guys can hit a winner literally from 10 feet behind the baseline. Yeah. Neither guy could hit a winner. And that's kind of just an indication of how tough it is to hit the ball through the court sometimes, where, you know, we have the polyester strings. It basically just started. I think I might have been the first American, honestly, to use Luxelon. I got it when I was in Europe in like '99. And then it kind of just started on tour, that polyester Luxelon. And now it's really mainstream. And you see a lot of the guys also using a mix now of natural gut and polyester to give a little bit more power and then still a little bit easier on the arm. But I think that's probably the biggest differences technologically is just the court surface and the balls just being heavier. You know, the rackets they're still graphite, and they still add little nuances like titanium or certain things to the rackets. But I think the courts and the balls being heavier is makes the biggest difference.
Yeah, and I find it so interesting that you know, that every few years something comes along, and certainly the Big Banger string that came on, I think it was 2000 or 99, was just such a game changer. You saw a lot of the female tennis changed a lot too. A lot of girls were starting to hit with a lot more kick serves and slicing and you know, being able to get more bite on the ball, heavier topspin forehands. So I think you're right. Michael, I wanted to ask you, just before we sort of move into wrapping it up, or any other questions that Ari has, any tips that you would have to juniors that are kind of watching in, that are, you know, good young players, they're sitting, you know, well, looking at in 4 or 5 years they'll get to a good college. They have a dream to go and play pro. Whether they get there or not, who knows? It's a long way away. But any sort of tips you'd give based on your pathway and your incredible career?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I would say make sure every time you step on court, and I know you guys hear this all the time. I'm sure you, Conrad and Ari, you guys at Centercourt Sports Academy are always making sure that your kids are doing this. But when you step on court, really look to try to improve that 1% every day. And whether that's 1% on your forehand, 1% on your footwork, 1% on your mental side, because we kind of look at it as a ladder. You want to be making sure you go up that ladder, those stairs, every single time we step on court. We're not always going to have a great day. You're not always going to play well. But if you go out there with a mindset that I'm trying to improve just a little bit every single day, it keeps it in perspective and it keeps it present. So you don't have to be like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm trying to get my forehand to look like Roger Federer's, but I can't even get close to that. Look how it looks right now. And it, you know, it can kind of be discouraging. So making sure you keep it in perspective and having just those baby steps and staying self-motivated, that's what helped me a lot, was each day I stepped on court trying to get that 1% better and not having regrets that I had a bad practice or, you know, I didn't get better that day.
Well, that's a really great tip. And again, we've had some incredible speakers on along with yourself, and the keyword resilience has come up so many times. And, you know, you hear it, it's a little bit cliche now, but you do hear it a lot, loving to suffer and, you know, wanting to sacrifice and all those things. So I really do hope that our juniors and our young players are really listening to the message coming from legends like yourself, Michael. And we're really excited with what we saw this year with Tennis Sangren and, you know, young Mackenzie's on his way. You're doing an incredible job. So keep it up. That's absolutely amazing. Ari, is there any other questions that you've got you wanted to get through?
Thank you.
Yeah, let me
Go. I just want to say one thing. Sorry, Ari.
go for
Also
it.
really important for the juniors is that respect all your coaches. Is that, you know, and now that I'm on the other side, I've been coaching for over 5 years now, is that, you know, we're all out here to make you guys the best possible players you can be. So, you know, we're sacrificing our time and energy to help you, you know, and that's really important. So take it from me. There were times where I was always respectful, but there were times, sometimes I took it for granted, you know, having that help, having the coach. So really respect the coaches, respect their time, respect their energy, because they're out there trying to make you guys not only better tennis players, but also, you know, better human beings.
Oh, that's awesome. Ari?
Let's we do have some dedicated listeners, so I'm going to ask Jose's question. Wanted to know about, looking back when you were playing as a junior, is there an area of the game that you feel would have been covered better or introduced to you at earlier developing stages? Jose is our junior development coach, so that kind of explains that question.
Yeah, no, definitely. My transition game was lacking as a junior, even though I did have really great success in the junior tournaments. I wasn't as comfortable, using my slice, looking to move forward and finishing points at net until basically later on in my professional career. So I think if I was looking to use my speed a little more offensively, taking time away from my opponents, kind of like a Nishikori does, or even guys more my stature, a David Goffin,
right,
then I think I could have had maybe a little quicker success on tour. Took me about 3 years to break into top 100, which is still pretty fast. But I think it would have taken a little bit of pressure off my body physically, of having to, because I played very defensive the first half of my career on tour. And then I finally started playing more offenses. So I think if I would have used my speed offensively more, looking to take time away and develop my transition game in juniors, it would have helped me sooner on the pro tour.
There you go. Love that advice. And then love that answer. Brian O'Connor, I really like this question. When you played against top guys like Federer and Nadal, could you immediately see the difference between them and the top 100 player? Is it, skill level, mental game? Like, did you know right away you're in for it just based on the warm-ups of the first couple games?
Yeah. I know Brian. So Brian, how you doing? Thanks for the question. Yeah. So for me, outside of the top 5, I feel the skill level is very similar. I feel it's more on a confidence level, knowing at 4-all, 30-all in the third, that they can hit that out wide serve on the deuce and then rocket a forehand inside out 3 inches from the line, and they're not afraid to miss it. They're okay with going after it. And that's, for me, the difference between somebody ranked, 8 in the world and, let's say, 50 in the world. But the top 5, Roger, Novak, Murray was there, Djokovic, I feel their skill set is a little more advanced than the other players. There's not a real weakness anywhere. And playing against those guys, I step on court always with the belief that I can win.
Of course.
And because you have to have that. I also have that belief that I want to show them that if they're going to beat me, they're going to have to dig deep. They're really going to have to work physically and mentally. I'm not just going to roll over just because, they're Roger Federer, Rafa Nadal. And that helped me a lot. So even though playing those guys, I didn't beat them, they were respectable matches and good matches where they had to work, because I wasn't afraid to go out there and make them work, and I wasn't afraid to go after my shots. So if that answers Brian's question. But yeah, those guys from a skill level, it's a different level. It's phenomenal. The shots that come off the racket, and each guy is different. Rafa's RPMs on his forehand, his disguise when he runs around his backhand to hit a forehand, he snaps his forehand at the last second going inside out or inside in, and you can't read it. So you're basically always on the defensive, which is so tough. And, combine that with the fact that he's left-handed. And then Roger, he was the best player that I've ever faced at covering the first ball. So he would hit a serve, and a lot of times I thought I'd hit a decent return. And he was so quick to get around and hit a forehand and take time away from me at the same time that it put me on the defensive right away. He was the best that I've ever played at doing that.
Michael, I wanted to ask you one, if I could jump in. As a smaller player, and you mentioned the average height being 6'3", what do you say to those young juniors that are coming out? We know they're not going to be 6'4", 6'3", but there's a lot of very good players out there that are 6 foot and lower. What do you take on that? What advice would you give them?
Well, it's the old adage, Connor, you can't measure heart. So
I love it.
You got to use your strengths and use your strengths against the other individuals. Whether they're taller than you, then make sure that you work on your return to serve, so you have your return to serve is better than their serve. So I loved playing some of the taller opponents like Karlovic and Kevin Anderson, because it was basically a challenge for me to use my return to serve, which was my best shot, against their best shot, which was. So it's really how how you challenge yourself. And then don't let anybody ever tell you that you can't do something. You know, I mean, you put your heart to it, put your desire, put your work ethic, your motivation, and just strive the best that you can be to do that. So at the end of the day, you can be satisfied and say, you know what, I did the best I could. You know, and there's some days, look, that, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's some days I played and maybe I got upset and I lost because I wasn't as mentally resilient as I could have been, or my forehand broke down, you know, and I would be pretty disappointed with myself. But the beauty of our sport is that we usually have another tournament that we can play. And it's not, I'll use the example as the Olympics. It's not a one every 4-year event where if something were to happen, you have to wait 4 years. Tennis is beautiful. We get to challenge ourselves and put ourselves on the line basically as much as we want to, as long as we enter tournaments. So, you know, it's a phenomenal platform to keep testing ourselves over and over again.
Michael, one more I have to ask. You played against Rios, you played Quirton, you played Rafa, Roger, Agassi, you know, even doubles, the Bryan brothers. These are some of the greatest of all time. I mean, I know it's hard to do because they're completely different players. I'm also not one to compare players. But if you had to pick out one thing that they had in common, what would it be?
I would say the air of confidence and belief in themselves and in their game. There was never a second of hesitation or doubt in pressure moments. They weren't afraid to go after it, and they were okay with failing or missing the shot if need be.
Do you think that's a learned thing? That's something they've learned, or they've talked themselves into that, or is that innate? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a combination of having it learned through experiences and trust. I think a little bit through the natural ability, the talent level, because they've had that success in being able to do it, you know, time tested again. But it's through being able to do it, you know, over and over and over again. And we've seen it. I don't know if you guys have been watching the documentary with Jordan. Yep. You know what I mean? It's a little bit similar. It's okay to fail. You know, nobody remembers the times when he took the winning shot and missed. They remember the times that he took the winning shot and made it. And it happens a lot with tennis too, with the greats. You know, for every time, you know, there was a match that Roger played against Tsonga one year in Montreal. He was up 5-1 in the third set in the semis of Montreal against Tsonga and lost, which normally would say, how did Roger Federer lose? He would never lose that. But you don't remember that. But you remember all the times that Roger obviously won Grand Slams and other tournaments. So it's putting yourselves in those positions and keep trusting it and being okay with yourself to fail and miss, and then getting right back on the horse and putting yourself in that position again, right back and going after it again. Amazing insights.
Ari, you got any more there from the gallery you wanted to bring out, or you want to let?
I got one that just came in. Yeah, I mean, I love that last one. One thing that I noticed in watching some of the greats is that they in those pressure moments, they actually, you know, they show up even more, like obviously like a Jordan or, you know, Kobe and Pippen and some of those guys in the NBA, but, you know, they just step it up even more when everybody else would nerves would hit them. A question, one last one just came in. What was the toughest mentally living the life of a world tour player? So basically, one from your own experiences.
Yeah, especially early on in my career, you know, I was traveling by myself to a lot of these tournaments around the world. So you have to do a lot of soul searching, a lot of solo time where you have to occupy the time and be productive. So I watched a lot of movies. I read a lot of books. It's kind of before social media got crazy. So now, you know, everybody's on Instagram and Snapchat, Twitter. But yeah, I mean, spending the time to quiet your mind when you're not playing, because there's a lot of noise out there, you know, especially nowadays through social media and comparing ourselves with everybody else. You know, a lot of times we look at social media and we like to compare our lives to other people, and some people post pictures here and videos there, and we think, they're always, maybe their lives are better than our lives, or,
Right.
And it's not that important. It's more about, how can we better our own lives? How can we better our community, continue to progress as people, and just improve ourselves. So, when I was traveling alone, I think it made me stronger. I mean, I'm sure I made a lot of bad decisions, in my career, whether it's playing tournaments in certain locations, not, doing fitness at wrong times, doing the wrong fitness, eating the wrong things, which I learned through experiences, through trial and error. And that, I learned what worked well for my body, what I should be doing. And then, the last half of my career, I was fortunate enough where I was doing well. And, I traveled with my wife, had a coach off and on for a little bit as well. So you learn.
What's your advice on to tennis in regards to social media? Are there any rules that the ATP puts out as to what they can and can't post? And I mean, because it's tough. These guys are in their 20s and
yeah,
they're kids, for the most part.
I mean, there's certain guidelines that they're supposed to follow. Obviously, not use profanity to a point, not get personal views, whether it's religion or I guess you can still use political views, but as long as it's not to the point where it draws so much criticism, it takes away. I mean, we've had talks before, and I think they know that. I mean, if you're taking views away from your tennis and it's not positive, it's probably not a good thing.
Right.
And I think kind of one of the players that I coached went through that a couple of years ago. So now he's kind of reinvented the image a little better, and I think it was kind of taken out of proportion too. But so he's done a better job with that, and it's just you gotta be careful. I mean, you gotta be careful with what you put out there, because media, and I know this too. I mean, they're looking to spin every angle they can, whether that's a positive or a negative. Mm-hmm. And we see it even now with whether it's politics, whether it's what I mean. If you say one word, they're always going to take it, and they're going to spin it in 17 different angles. So
right, it's just interesting for tennis players because they're role models, but they're also so young at the same time. It's just
right. Yeah, no, it's a big monkey on their back, because they're young. So but sometimes they don't realize that they're an inspiration to a lot of young players coming up, and they got to be careful with what they say to make sure they're still, a lot of kids are idolizing them.
Right.
Look, Michael, we don't want to hang on to you too much longer. Before we say goodbye, I just wanted to remind our viewers of the Centercourt 360 program, which is just a unique and fantastic program, providing a holistic pathway for the student athlete, in that we're providing, options, especially now where people are online schooling. You might need some additional support. We've got some free webinars that go with the 360 program. In 20 minutes tonight, we'll have Dr. Chris Thurbin's webinar, which is Win-Win Solutions for Parents. I think that's going to be very interesting. Next Monday, we have Emma Doyle, who's talking about the inner voice, developing the inner voice. That'll be Monday, 5:30 on 360. And then next week as well, there'll be a true game changer webinar, which is based on the TAIS test, which really is a way of kind of learning more about yourself and becoming better, in all the key areas that you're needed to. So please remember the 360 program. It's available. If you email 360@centercourtclub.com, you can get a schedule. But other than that, from Ari and myself, we look forward to next week, seeing everyone back on Tuesday and Thursday with some great speakers again. But Michael, wow, what a career. Congratulations. You're an absolute inspiration, and look forward to seeing you the next time you're up around our area. Please do pop in and see us. We'd love you to come and meet some of our members and kids.
Thank you, Conrad. Thank you, Ari. And great job up there with Centercourt Sports Academy. I'd love to come by and chat with you guys and see how you're doing. Such a phenomenal job up there. So keep it up.
Awesome. You as well. Best of luck with your program.
Good luck.
Thank you, Ari.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.